Hi everyone and welcome back to this week's AMT Fresh Produce Market Overview. We've seen some interesting changes across the markets, especially in Joburg, where the G20 cleanup has shaken up the hawker trade and even started affecting prices. There's also some good news for our potato producers, with markets selling out over the weekend while tomatoes remain hot after a big price jump over the past 2 weeks. Let's take a closer look at what's driving the markets this week and what you can expect moving forward. This episode is proudly brought to you by Villa Crop Protection. With world-class solutions like Masterlock, tailored for South African conditions, Villa helps you manage risk and increase productivity with research-backed confidence. The potato price jumped by 18% last week to R45.10 per 10 kg, but is still 64% lower than a year ago. Tomato prices had the sharpest increase last week, jumping by 33% week on week to R11.70 per kilogram. Onions stayed sideways on R40.42 per 10 kg, still about 10% lower year on year, while carrots traded 13% higher on R5.14. Average pepper price jumped to R19.48. Cabbages came in lower on R1.53, which is now 52% lower year on year, and is on now such low levels that it's cheaper for farmers to rather dish in the cabbages back into the ground rather than delivering it to the markets. Sweet potatoes decreased to R4.62 per kilogram. Spinach dropped to R2.31. Butternuts and pumpkins remain extremely expensive and scarce on the markets, with butternuts increasing to R13.94, while pumpkins were 7% lower on R8.53 per kilogram. Garlic decreased to R63. Green beans jumped to R18.73, with the latest cucumber price now on R12.84 per kilogram. We had a slightly better week in the fruit markets last week, with bananas increasing to R8.31. Apples remained sideways on R13.20, with the latest pear price dropping slightly to R9.38 last week. Oranges increased by about 5% to R4.44, while avos dropped by 6% to R20.56. The table grape price also came in lower on R54.26 per kilogram. Pineapples increased to R10.03, lemons decreased to R5.98, with the latest blueberry price also 6% lower on R60.17 per kilogram. For more detail on each of these commodities, please go and download our latest weekly fruit and weekly vegetable reports, which is available for free on amtrends.co.za now. It's free of charge, but I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to our channels. Not only will you be on top of the latest agri-trends, but it will also help us a lot to make sure we bring you the latest info. There's an interesting development in the hawker trade industry this week. With the recent Joburg cleanup ahead of the G20 summit, quite a few hawkers have been removed or moved off the streets, and that's actually starting to influence demand on the markets, especially on the Joburg market. Prices have been a bit lower than usual as a result. It'll be interesting to see whether these traders find new spots to sell from, or if they'll simply return to their usual places once things settle down again. Now let's move over to potatoes, where there's finally some good news for our producers. Markets sold out over the weekend, and by Monday morning there was basically no stock left on the floor. This came from a nice combination of better demand and slightly lower volumes. For this week, we're hoping to hold current price levels. The market might start off strong, but prices could ease a bit towards the weekend as demand slows down and volumes pick up again. One thing worth noting is that there are a lot of baby potatoes on the markets right now, and that's pushing the average price down a bit. If we only look at the extra large, large and large medium classes, the average is actually much closer to around R50 per 10 kg, with the average Sifra price also on R52 last week. Quality overall is looking good this year, much better than last year in fact. Looking ahead, we might see slightly lower volumes again this week, which could help balance out any softer demand that is also expected. Now for tomatoes, prices jumped quite sharply over the last 2 weeks because of lower volumes. This week, volumes are expected to stay low but could pick up a little towards the weekend. Demand isn't exactly shooting the lights out right now, so prices might move sideways for the time being. We're nearing the end of the winter production season, and since the summer producers haven't started delivering yet, we're seeing a temporary shortage on the markets, which is driving these higher prices at the moment. But that could correct quite quickly once the summer regions start coming in. When it comes to other vegetables like carrots, beetroot, spinach and cabbage, it is a tougher week lying ahead. There's still plenty of supply, but demand is pretty weak as mentioned, and without a supply story for each of these commodities, prices will likely stay under pressure. And finally, taking a quick look at the fruit markets, volumes increased last week for most of the fruit commodities, and that pushed avos and especially grape prices downward. We're probably just about to see the first local table grapes hitting the market, which could keep prices trending lower as we move towards the end of this year. This episode was proudly brought to you by Villa Crop Protection. For more detailed insights and forecasts, please visit amtrends.co.za and download our latest reports. It's free of charge. I'm Dr. Johnny van der Merwe. Thanks for tuning in and see you next week.